The stunning leak of highly sensitive military plans accidentally shared on an encrypted group chat between Trump administration officials and the Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg that you just heard from included details on targets, weapons, and timing. He didn't reveal that, but put in the wrong hands, it could have put roughly 40,000 U.S. troops currently deployed in the Middle East at risk. My next source spent 6 years as an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserves and a 6-month deployment in Afghanistan. Former Biden Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg joins me now, and it's great to have you here, sir. What was your reaction to this breach of extremely sensitive defense information?
It was shocking. And I got to say, all the things that I've seen happen in the last few weeks, it's taken a lot to feel genuinely shocked. But this is genuinely shocking. We're talking about incredibly sensitive, highly classified information that they didn't just discuss on an unclassified system. They sent war plans to the wrong guy. Now, they're lucky, and we're lucky, that that wrong guy was a responsible, patriotic, ethical journalist who just had on this program who knew not to publish anything that could put people's lives in danger. But I got two questions on my mind. One, what if this had in fact, gone to somebody else? I mean, somebody who could plausibly be in some of these people's cell phones. I don't know, the Chinese ambassador or Russian negotiator. And the other question on my mind is, how many other times has something like this happened? This is the one that we know about. But how many other times could they have screwed up like this in a way that puts American troops and families in harm's way?
Yeah, is your concern that if they were texting about this and had this group chat, that maybe there are other encrypted chats about this using Signal, an app that anyone can download, that anyone can use if they're inadvertently added to it, like this was?
Yeah, the whole point of classified information systems is to keep classified information on them. And by the way, I don't know everything about how Pete Hegseth's computers work, but I know this. In my experience, both in the cabinet and as an intelligence officer, you would have to go out of your way to take classified information and move it into an unclassified system. I don't know if a lot of folks understand how this works, but it's not like there's a computer where you might get an unclassified email and a classified email in the same inbox. They're not even the same computers. By design, it is very difficult for information to move from one system to the other unless somebody goes out of their way to do that. And, I don't want to speculate on how the FBI will respond to this or how Congress will respond to this, but I know that it was drilled into us back when I was an intelligence officer that if you ever took top secret information, moved it over to an unclassified system and disclosed it, that would be a crime. I mean, I can't tell you how much this was drilled into us when I was in the military. So much so that I would have bad dreams when I was a junior officer about accidentally maybe bringing in my cell phone into a classified area where you're supposed to physically check in your cell phone and not even bring it into that space so that if there's some listening device, that information couldn't possibly get out. And by the way, I've got to zoom out and make sure everybody understands why this information is classified. It's not just classified because it's interesting or because it's special. By definition, when something is highly classified, it is highly classified because if it got into the wrong hands, it could harm national security or get American troops killed.
Yeah, well, and just in terms of how this is typically handled and the fact that it was in this group chat that obviously he was in and no one noticed he was in, you said maybe FBI investigations, congressional investigations. Do you think that federal laws were broken here, whether that be the Federal Records Act, given everyone knows Signal is set to delete? And as he reported, this was set to delete, meaning there is no record of this conversation after it expires after a while. Or do you believe this violated the Espionage Act?
I would have very real concerns about violations of both of those laws. And remember, some of these same people suggested that others should go to jail in the past for far less. Now, this will be a test of integrity for the FBI, which is ordinarily responsible for counterintelligence investigations and investigating the mishandling of classified information. It's also a huge test for Congress. It's a test for congressional Republicans who, if they have any integrity, know that this is a serious matter. Now, we've already seen a lot of them rushing to make excuses for this, but this is incredibly serious stuff.
President Trump, as you saw earlier, was saying he wasn't aware of this report. We're since told he's been briefed on it, but he reposted something that Elon Musk wrote earlier, kind of mocking all of this. by making fun of The Atlantic. He wrote, "Best place to hide a dead body is page 2 of The Atlantic magazine because no one ever goes there." Trump reposted that earlier. Do you see that as making light of what has happened here?
Yeah, because this is all a game to them. You know, nobody in Donald Trump's family is on a ship in the Mediterranean. Nobody in Elon Musk's family is at risk from the kinds of economic or security harms that are going on here. They think all of this is a joke or a game because these are incredibly rich, powerful men who, frankly, don't have to worry about the kinds of things most Americans do. And look, this is part of a bigger pattern, right? The sloppiness and the incompetence, whether it's firing the people who were in charge of keeping our nuclear weapons safe, apparently by accident, and then scrambling to hire them back on, whether it's sending an email to try to buy out air traffic controllers in the middle of an air traffic control shortage, and then scrambling after a plane crash to say, oh, that never applied to them, whether it's that Doge site, their so-called wall of receipts, thinking that they were proving that they saved the taxpayer $8 billion with a B, not realizing that the contract they were talking about was $8 million with an M, which means they were off by 100,000%. And now this incredibly grave and serious matter of taking classified information about American battle plans involving American troops and randomly sending those battle plans to the wrong guy. If they don't understand the seriousness of that, then they don't understand how their jobs affect the lives of ordinary American people. And as an American, having the most powerful people in your country not take their responsibilities seriously can be lethal. You know, every day I was in Afghanistan, I knew that I could die because of an intelligence failure, that if certain information about what I was doing got into the wrong hands, that could cost me my life. But I also knew that everybody in my chain of command, up and down, from the gunny sergeant sitting next to me in a vehicle, to the colonel, to the then Secretary of Defense and President of the United States, took my security and the security of all of our troops seriously, took the responsibility, the life and death responsibility they had seriously, and would keep me safe.
Do you think someone should be fired over this?
Absolutely. I mean, if I made a mistake like this as a lieutenant, I would be probably not just fired, but probably indicted and tried and maybe in prison. And the idea that, you remember, these guys love talking about merit, right? We hear a lot about this alleged principle that they're hiring people on merit. I think, you know, there's some questions there. I mean, you know, our current Secretary of Defense hadn't shown a lot of evidence of, you know, running a large organization, or let alone running a large organization well. And he got put in charge of the largest organization in the United States of America and the most important organization in the world, which is the U.S. Department of Defense. And if there's not accountability for a screw up like this, especially from a president who used to fire people every day on television for sport, what are we even doing here?
Pete Buttigieg, thank you for joining and thank you for your time tonight.
With me now, retired Navy Admiral James Stavridis, a CNN senior military analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. He's also a partner at the investment firm, the Carlyle Group. Admiral, thank you for joining us this evening. As you've heard already, President Trump, he kind of brushed off the report, basically saying it didn't stop the operation in Yemen. What was your take? Does this matter if the attack was ultimately successful?
No, it does not. I mean, these are two completely separate things, Laura. There's the whole process, which we'll talk about in a moment, guarding the nation's security. And then there's the operational context. How did the strike come out? Was it a valid strike? Two different conversations. So let's talk, as we ought to, about a failed process here. The idea of protecting classified information is crucial. And in this context, I'll give you several reasons why this is so important. Number one is the example it sets to the millions of people who have clearances, who are told constantly, you can never reveal these classified secrets of the nation. So when that occurs, how do you then turn around and say, we're going to do a bunch of polygraphs in the Pentagon to find out who leaked information about Elon Musk's visit, while we are going to do nothing about the most senior members of the national security team who put classified information on unclassified circuits. So
you're talking about
terrible
Signal
example.
in particular, because Signal, one official told
Correct.
CNN that, quote, everyone is on Signal all day and all night. I mean, all day and night. That seems pretty stunning given the process that ought to be used to have Signal be a default or even widely used vehicle.
Absolutely. And, having spent a decade as a four-star officer, nearly a four-star officer in the armed forces, I can assure you I've never seen anybody using an unclassified means like Signal to move information around. So it sets a terrible signal. Number two, our allies look at this and they say, I wonder if the United States can be trusted with our most advanced secrets if they're going to be leaked and put into highly unclassified settings like this. And number three, think about what we are revealing to our opponents. We've allowed them a valued glimpse into the highest levels of our national security team as they make big decisions. Believe me, it's high fives in Moscow and Beijing and Caracas, Venezuela tonight.
Well, what should one do if they're trying to share? I mean, just walk the American public through that process, because undoubtedly there are going to be conversations so-called offline or between a so-called principals group where they're going to want to share information. What is the process for sharing sensitive national security information like this?
The United States appropriately has invested billions and billions of dollars in creating systems that are truly hardened. They can't be penetrated by our enemies. One such mechanism is called the SIPRNet, which is effectively highly classified email. It is a common device. There are SIPRNet terminals in every secure facility. Number two, we have invested billions in creating actual classified material spaces, rooms, like the Situation Room in the White House. I had the equivalent of that in my headquarters at U.S. European Command, at U.S. Southern Command. All of our major commands and many more junior commands even have these classified spaces. Every embassy in the United States has one. So there are classified email systems, there are classified spaces to have these conversations, and we even have handheld devices that provide this level of classified protection, SIPRNet,
Wow.
cell phones, if you will. So I just cannot understand why this team would default to using Signal, and in particular sending highly sensitive operational documents. That was the culmination of this. Secretary of Defense Hegseth putting this on Signal. Very shocking.
Sounds like you had to work to fall off this particular ladder in this way. Admiral James Stavridis, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I'm going to guess there's a refrain ringing in a lot of people's head right now. Butter emails. Some of the same people blasting Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server, they were also on this particular group chat.
Any security professional, military, government, or otherwise, would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct and criminally prosecuted for being so reckless with this kind of information.
We're going to hold people accountable. Nobody is above the law, not even Hillary Clinton, even though she thinks she is.
Mishandling classified information is still a violation of the Espionage Act. It started with Hillary Clinton. It has continued without accountability.
The former Secretary of State's response, quote, "You have got to be kidding me." Let's talk more about the fallout with Adam Kinzinger, a CNN senior political commentator and former Republican congressman, Mark Zaid, a national security attorney, and Eli Stokols, a White House and foreign policy correspondent for Politico. Let me go to you, Congressman, because The Atlantic reports that the defense secretary revealed operational details about targets and weapons and timing. What are the implications of that having happened?
I mean, it's huge. It really is. I mean, first off, I'd like to point out that I didn't have a security clearance anymore, but 3 days ago, Trump took away my non-existent security clearance while this was going on among his cabinet. If I was still in the military and did what they did, I would definitely either be kicked out of the military or potentially even being brought up on charges, because what you have in there is a level of detail, according to the author, that went into the details of what strike packages were, when they were happening, et cetera. And here's another quick point. So I saw Olga Lautman on Twitter she did a timeline and basically came to the conclusion that Steve Witkoff was apparently in Moscow when he was added to this group chat, when he was added to the Signal chat. Now, if that's the case, you have to believe, and we were told this every time we traveled to hostile nations, that they will be monitoring your chats. They'll be monitoring what you do on your phone while you're there. And also, Russia was spying on Ukrainians in their military by exploiting a loophole in Signal. So this very well may not be a victimless crime. It's very possible that Russia had access to this through Steve Witkoff. So this is, it's obviously terrible, and I don't think even enough anger is from what we've seen from this administration.
Mark, I want to hear more about what possible legal consequences there could be for something like this, given even what Tulsi Gabbard, by the way, posted on X. This was just 10 days ago, gentlemen. Any unauthorized release of classified information is a violation of the law and will be treated as such. Could someone be held legally responsible for what happened here?
They could. Would they is another question. But under the Espionage Act, which is in Title 18, Section 793, going back 100 years, there are multiple provisions at which this could apply. In fact, one of them was what so many of these members who are on this text message were shouting for Hillary Clinton to be prosecuted under Section F, which deals with gross negligence. Now, it didn't apply to that situation. I'll point out the one thing where everyone holds Clinton responsible, and 10 years ago when this happened, I was repeatedly saying what a poor choice of judgment it was that she and her senior staff, who should have known better, were using this private server. But people are accusing her of destroying the emails. And yet, in this Signal message, which is not being discussed enough, they had, anyone who uses Signal knows this, you can set when the messages delete. And they had set these messages to self-destruct, like on Mission Impossible for the older people out there back in the 1960s. And that would be a violation beyond the Espionage Act if there's national defense information, which it sounds like there was. It'd be a violation of the Federal Records Act, possibly the Presidential Records Act, that requires preservation of these records.
So would that be considered possibly in an effort to circumvent the federal law, or even if Signal has this mechanism for everything you talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, federal workers can sometimes use their personal devices, but they're supposed to CC their work account so that the records are preserved. And we dealt with that when I did FOIA litigation, Freedom of Information Act litigation, regarding Hillary's emails, actually for the Daily Caller of all places, trying to get at what was the personal communications on personal devices regarding work-related issues. So the hypocrisy of this is just through the roof.
Well, Eli, I mean, are you hearing that there is, publicly there is support for the national security team? Is it true behind the scenes, though?
Well, that's what we're trying to find out. We've talked to a lot of people inside the White House. They have been sort of rocked by this as well. And people inside the White House have been having a lot of private conversations today, and those have centered on the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, the person who added Jeff Goldberg to the Signal chat. Now, has that chatter about him possibly needing to resign, has that reached the senior staff level? Our understanding is that, sources say that, yes, there's been some talk about that, but it's not being seriously considered at that time. He's had, strong statements of support from Speaker Mike Johnson, from other people in MAGA universe, saying that Mike Waltz is doing a great job. They know his job may be on the line here. As Trump watches the coverage, digests this, decides how frustrated he's going to be and who he personally holds responsible.
Senator Kelly, this wasn't a government communication system. No one apparently noticed Jeffrey Goldberg was in the group chat. Secretary Hegseth reportedly wrote at one point, "We're currently clean on OPSEC, operational security." What do you make of this?
Well, it shows just how sloppy all of those individuals on this Signal chain were. And I think it's important, Anderson, to note that this was about a operational mission. And it's just incredibly sloppy, but it's also dangerous. If information on a strike against Yemen would leak out ahead of time. Let's just say they put somebody else on that chain and the person decided to broadcast it widely at an inopportune time. That could put the pilots that were conducting these strikes at risk. And I think it brings up a larger question about whether are they following the rules that the rest of us live by when we handle classified information. If this incident is any indication, it looks like they do not.
What normally would be the way a group like this might communicate such highly sensitive information?
Well, normally you would go into a SCIF and you would do it face to face. And if you couldn't access a SCIF, there are SCIFs around the country. Let's just say when I'm in Tucson, Arizona, I use the Border Patrol SCIF that is down the street from my house several miles away. If you can't do that, there are secure systems to make a secure phone call within the White House, at the Defense Department, anywhere where these individuals normally would be, including in their own homes. When you're the Secretary of Defense or you're the National Security Advisor or the Secretary of State, they'll often set up a secure facility for you in your house so you can have these kind of conversations. It should not be done on Signal. I don't know anybody on the Intelligence Committee here that I serve on that would have anything close to this kind of conversation.
Speaker Johnson downplayed this. He said that they'll tighten up. It doesn't seem like there's much, publicly at least, outrage by your Republican colleagues. Obviously, if this was a Democratic administration, this had been Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or anybody else, it would have been a different tune. Do you expect any kind of hearings here?
Well, Anderson, we have a hearing tomorrow, an open hearing about worldwide threats on the Senate Intelligence Committee. And I can guarantee you that this topic is going to come up tomorrow in an open hearing.
The CIA director is supposed to be there, right?
CIA director will be there. He was one of the individuals on this text chain. I think the other thing that I noticed is just the discussion that they were having over Signal. It was almost like they were deciding to order a pizza. And it's not the kind of conversation you would expect between the principals when they're deciding to commit troops to combat in a foreign country. So I was pretty shocked by, how not only that this was done on this platform on Signal, but also just shocked about the lack of depth in the discussion before sending our Navy pilots over the beach to drop bombs where there is a significant threat.
President Trump reposted online tonight a comment from Elon Musk joking about this and downplaying the reach of the Atlantic, essentially saying, no one reads the Atlantic. Do you think they are actually have no concern about this, or is this just like a public face of poo-pooing this?
I would expect that they're not having a great day in the White House this afternoon. This is a big deal. This is a breach of the law. It's also national security. It has compromised these individuals and these platforms who had access to their communication devices, their phones, that they obviously have Signal on. Where were those phones over these days? Who can get into the rooms where they keep these devices and possibly see this stuff? There should be some form of an investigation here.
Senator Mark Kelly, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joining me now, CNN senior political commentator, former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod, and CNN global affairs analyst, Brett McGurk, who served under 4 presidents, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, and most recently the White House Middle East and North Africa coordinator at the National Security Council during the Biden administration. David, what do you make of how the White House, the Pentagon are handling this tonight, particularly Secretary Hegseth, who's now attacking Jeffrey Goldberg's credibility and denying any war plans were discussed?
Yeah, well, this is a well-worn pattern now in this operation, which is to deny. But look, Senator Kelly spoke to a couple of serious things. Anybody who served in the White House at a senior level, anybody who served as Brett has served, understands the sensitivity of this kind of information. The fact that they said, well, the operation went forward and there was no damage done, doesn't mean that the next time there won't be damage done. And there should be great concern about that. The fact that this was carried out on Signal is mind-boggling, I think, to most of us who've been around this. But there are a couple of other issues, Anderson. The Secretary of Defense was apparently circulating, despite what he says, war plans on Signal. And it goes back to how he became Secretary of Defense. The way that you became the thing that Donald Trump searched for in his appointees were first, absolute loyalty to Donald Trump, and secondly, how you perform on TV. So that's how you end up with a guy who was a weekend host on Fox and Friends as the Secretary of Defense. Anybody at a senior level that I know in any administration, Republican or Democrat, would have known this is not right. This is not how I'm going to communicate this information. Secondly, thank God Jeffrey Goldberg was on this Zoom. And it just goes to why we need good, aggressive reporting so we know what's going on, because there were troops that were jeopardized by this recklessness. And we wouldn't have known it if Jeff Goldberg hadn't accidentally been on the call. And then finally, where is accountability for this? The fact that the Congress will be muted, apparently, because Republican congressmen and senators are afraid of challenging the White House on this, that is really alarming. And so from a public interest standpoint, there are a lot of questions here.
Yeah, sure. I just want to point out it was a Signal chat, not a Zoom. Brett, as a former National Security Council official, how far outside the official process is arranging communications like this on a commercial app on Signal?
Well, Anderson, I've helped coordinate strikes against the Houthis. I helped coordinate military operations. And on the one hand, I have to say that the operation against the Houthis is extraordinarily complex.
And it's ongoing, I should point out.
As a military and intelligence matter. And frankly, the campaign that they are executing now was actually developed in the last administration. It's something we handed over. They're executing on it. I think CENTCOM is carrying out this campaign, from everything I can tell, with extraordinary professionalism and skill. And this is now just a massive distraction. Look, I don't know exactly what happened here, but there is no excuse whatsoever to have the timing and the targets of a military operation 2 hours before the operation commences on an unclassified system. That's just completely almost unheard of.
Jamie Gangel, let me start with you because, I mean, honestly, as we were kind of ticking through this, I mean, it's hard to even know where to start. I know you have been talking to intelligence officials all day. What have you and they been zeroing in on?
So I just want to say I've spoken to two very high-ranking former intelligence officials, both of whom worked for Republicans. And they both said that they were stunned, along with everybody else, that there is no defense that this could have happened and that someone should be fired. So let me just give you a couple of quotes. I asked, would you ever set up communication like this on a commercial app? Absolutely not. There's secure video conferencing. This is not the way it's done. Quote, they broke every procedure known to man about protecting operational material before a military strike. The lack of operational security and stupidity is just stunning.
David Sanger.
Well, it is, as Jamie and I were discussing before, you don't know whether to laugh or cry about this one, right?
Yeah, there are plenty of other emojis we can put on the screen to underscore the degree of this.
The laughter part is that an editor, great reporter known to us all, was mistakenly put on this list.
Thankfully, he seems to be a very loyal American.
Yeah, seems to be, and is. The cry part is, there is a procedure for this. There are these elaborate systems that the United States has spent billions of dollars to build over the years to deal with classified information. And if this was reversed, if it was a Democratic administration, I suspect you'd be hearing something different from some of the Republicans you've heard now. And the reason I suspect that is they rightly went after Hillary Clinton in 2016 for engaging in classified conversations over her home server and home phone. Now, Signal is somewhat more secure. It's used widely across Washington and around the world, but it's not supposed to be used for this. And that gets to the criminal piece of this, which is if you put classified information deliberately in a non-classified space, That's where the Espionage Act investigation kicks in.
Yeah. So let's flash back, shall we, to 2016, when Jim Comey, then FBI director, had this to say in the summer about Hillary Clinton's use of private email to communicate classified information.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
All right, so that takes us to the partisan side of the table. Governor Sununu, how do you, I mean, if you're a Republican now trying to defend this administration, I mean, how can you do it with a straight face?
Well, I don't think anyone's defending what happened. I mean, to their credit, they're owning it. They came out and said this happened. And I think you bring up a good point. You have to figure out, why was Goldberg included in the first place? Is Signal appropriate? It's encrypted, but is an appropriate method? And what was put on there, right? In terms of not the validity, but the legality of what was put on there, should that have even been communicated at all? The best thing you can do in a situation, own it. Own every bit of it. Say we completely made a mistake. We're going to change our protocols. We're going to have internal review processes. If you try to dodge or avoid any of this, it's not going to go well. So hats off to them for kind of admitting it up front, but I think they just need to take the next steps and be super transparent about everything that happened.
Well, and so one thing that has I've been watching for this all afternoon, honestly, because I covered the 2016 campaign, Hillary Clinton's campaign at this time. She has written this on X. There's another emoji. It's like the whole thing, we could have this whole conversation emoji. She says, "You've got to be kidding me." Sarah, Congresswoman.
Yes, I mean, look, I think there's a few things that concern me about this. First, yes, how did Jeffrey Goldberg get on there? But actually, why were they having this conversation on Signal to begin with? What other conversations have they been having on commercial applications that they didn't accidentally send to a reporter that we know nothing about? And thirdly, and most importantly, these kinds of operational details, I sit on the Armed Services Committee. We don't even get these kinds of this detailed level of operations until after the fact, because it is so important for our service members' safety that this is kept so tightly held. And so they are directly putting our service members at risk through this. It's not just some amorphous operational security. It is the people I represent in San Diego who are putting their lives on the line for our country, who they're treating this kind of information about with such callousness.